everyone, it's Michelle Caruana from Play Cafe Academy, and in today's video, I want to talk about one of the most common struggles that people have on their journey towards opening an indoor playground or a play cafe, and that is funding. Now, I have talked about this several times in many different videos on this channel, and I certainly cover it in much more detail inside of my Play Cafe Academy course. But I really wanted to create this video to allow you to look at funding and this step of the opening process through maybe a different lens. And some of you guys may have noticed that every single year I teach a mobile event workshop. So, where I teach all of the basic business concepts and launch strategy behind starting a mobile soft play business or a balloon decor business. Really, anything that does not depend on having a physical location. So, there's no lease to sign, there's no build out, nothing like that. And I teach that workshop once a year. The 2022 workshop is actually coming up as I'm releasing this video. And one of the reasons that I teach this mobile event workshop is because it's one of the recommended ways that I suggest to prospective indoor playground owners to not only generate the funding that they need for their brick and mortar space, but it's also a great way to test the market out. So, see if people are looking for party and play options in your area, and it's also a great way to see if the industry is a good fit for you because I have to tell you, a lot of people go into this industry really excited and really optimistic with, rose colored glasses on or however you want to call it. And while optimism is one of the best qualities that a business owner can have, a lot of times they do unfortunately become quickly disillusioned because working with parents, working with kids, planning birthday parties, um, accommodating play, like all of that stuff that goes into this industry is often a lot more difficult and a lot different than what people expect going into the business. So, a lot of times, what I will teach in my workshop and what I talk about in my Play Cafe Academy and Playmaker Society programs is that you can really launch one of these mobile event businesses. Again, a business model where you're serving the same type of client, so parents and young children, without having a physical location. So let's just say, for example's sake, a mobile soft play business. A lot of times you can treat this business as almost like a minimum viable product or an MVP. So the definition that I like to use for a minimum viable product is an early version of a service that is really designed to ensure that the business strategy and vision are aligned with what the market needs and what's aligned with your values as a business owner. And not just your values, but also your strengths. Because again, like I said, a lot of times people realize after they sign their lease, after they complete their build out, after they've sunk hundreds of thousands of dollars into their indoor playground, that, hey, I actually don't really enjoy working with local families in this capacity. I want to try something different. But again, by then they have way more invested in this business than they would have if they would have launched a mobile business to start with. So that is one of the main reasons that I teach how to launch a mobile event business. And I want to go through in this video some pros of this strategy and also some cons because there are definitely some drawbacks that are associated with this because when you look at the standard definition for a minimum viable product, if you took business school or if you have a business degree like I do, you've likely heard this definition used a couple different ways. And typically, what an MVP or a minimum viable product is, it's essentially an early version of exactly the service or exactly the product that you plan to offer. But because this is technically a different industry, I mean, it's the same industry, but it is technically a different business model than a brick and mortar facility. It doesn't always have that true translation from, let's say, quote unquote, MVP launch to real launch. So, because those aren't 100% in sync, there are some cons or drawbacks associated with the strategy. So, I wanted to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly today. And then, if you would like to know more, you can sign up for my mobile event workshop. It is linked below this video. Either you can attend the 2022 live version of the workshop, or I also offer a replay available to purchase along with my business plan, my mobile event checklist, all of that good stuff, pretty much everything you need to get your very first booking with your mobile event business. All right, so first I wanted to talk about some pros, some benefits of using this strategy of launching a mobile event business before proceeding with your plans to open an actual brick and mortar facility. So, number one, you can establish a strong customer base, people that are ready and excited for you to open your brick and mortar facility. And a lot of times, people will go through my mobile event workshop and then work for years establishing this customer base, building their email list, building their social media channels, getting a great reputation around town so that eventually they can translate these customers into brick and mortar customers. Because there is nothing worse as an indoor playground owner than opening your doors or announcing your opening date and hearing crickets because you haven't given yourself a long enough runway, you haven't done enough pre-opening marketing, you haven't done enough to really engage with your community prior to that announcement. So, launching a mobile version of your business to again get good reviews, generate excitement and buzz around town, and establish a customer base is one of the best benefits of this strategy. Now, a con that goes along with that is if you do work for years on your mobile business to save up money and grow your social channels and all that good stuff to translate into your brick and mortar, you could miss the boat on some of those customers. So let's, for example, say your vision is to open a play area for children under 5, very similar to what I had in New York. And let's say you spend 3 years serving toddler and preschool parties, doing mobile soft play and balloons and party setup and event planning, things like that. By the time you actually open your brick and mortar facility, those children whose email addresses you have, who have had a great experience with your products and services in the past, they've already aged out of your desired age range for your play area. So while their reviews are still great, you can still use pictures and testimonials and things like that as business assets to translate into your indoor playground, your actual brick and mortar facility. Those customers themselves might not follow you along for the ride because, again, if it takes you years to save up the amount of money, they are no longer the right age for your parties or for your facility. So that is one drawback that is associated with the benefit. So you just kind of have to weigh your timeline, what age range you want to offer. Maybe your indoor playground, maybe you vision it going all the way up to 12 or even just 10 years old. If that is the case, then you're going to have a much longer lifetime of your customer. And I don't mean lifetime like their actual natural life, but I mean how long they can actually be a customer in your business. So let's say customer lifetime value, that's going to be a lot larger if you can cater to many different age ranges. So this is all going to depend on what your vision is for your mobile business, what your vision is for your indoor playground business, and how those two can align. So I always tell people that are considering doing this as a first step to opening their brick and mortar facility is to try to think through all of these things ahead of time so that you can translate as many customers as possible, and also to collect reviews and testimonials and pictures and things like that so that even if the customers themselves aren't going to follow you along, you can use that good word of mouth and your great reputation and your good reviews to generate new customers that are like them that have younger children by the time you open your facility. So that is a pro and a con that I wanted to kind of go over. The second pro of using this minimum viable product solution is that you can really hone in on who you want to serve in your community. So maybe you start out with your mobile soft play business serving kids all the way up through 12 years old, but you quickly learn that your passion and your skill set and your strengths really lie in serving young children. So infants, babies, and toddlers. That is going to give you some excellent clarity and insight that you just can't get unless you are in the thick of it actually serving these families. You cannot get this knowledge just by researching, just by doing surveys, just by completing your business plan. You need real life experience in order to get this insight and get this clarity. Okay, I just had to pause for a quick second because my dogs were downstairs going absolutely crazy. So I apologize if you heard any of that craziness in the background. But I want to dive in right back into it and wrap up what I just mentioned. And I also wanted to mention that it's not just about building up your customer base prior to launching your brick and mortar business, but you're also going to be building up all of your business assets. So I kind of alluded to this, but you're going to be able to grow your social media channels, whether that's TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, your email list. You're going to be able to generate content on your website that increases your search engine optimization so that by the time your brick and mortar facility is ready to open its doors, you already have credibility on Google. And when somebody searches for parties or event services in your area, you already have authority on Google, not just with local families in your area. So that is really important because search engine optimization and ranking on Google and things like that, it takes time. And a lot of people don't think about that kind of thing until they actually reach opening day and their goals are just not being met. And then they kind of go back and say, well, how can I rank higher on Google? How can I get more traffic? How can I get more people in my doors? And a lot of times the answer is just ranking higher on Google, but it does take several months for a lot of the tips that I give on this channel to go into effect. So if you can start this way before you ever open your facility, even before you sign your lease through your mobile event business, you are going to be much better off in the long run. All right, another pro of using a mobile event business as a minimum viable product before launching a brick and mortar business is that there's less startup costs, there's less red tape, there's less planning involved. Sure, of course, you want to validate your business idea. You want to do competitive analysis. You want to spend some time on branding and learning about your customers and putting together your pricing and your packages and things like that. But trust me, it is much less involved than signing a lease, completing a build out, getting a huge SBA loan or a bank loan or an investor or anything like that. So, generally, the lead time from idea to launch for a mobile business is much, much quicker. And you can start generating bookings and sales and clients much quicker than if you were to launch an indoor playground brick and mortar business. So, if you are looking to generate money while you continue validating your idea, while you continue to build your business assets, which I alluded to just a minute ago, a mobile event business is a great way to do that. And like I said, you're going to be able to start putting money in the bank a lot quicker, and there's less time upfront, and there's a lot less funding concerns upfront because generally it's a fraction of the cost to purchase all of the equipment, all of the software, all of the stuff that you need to operate a mobile event business as opposed to a brick and mortar business. Another big pro of this strategy of using a mobile event business as an MVP prior to launching a brick and mortar business is that it gives you a lot more flexibility. So while you're learning, while you're growing, while you're figuring out what you want your niche to be, who you want to serve, who you want to cater your services to and your marketing messaging to, this gives you a lot more flexibility to be really agile and make quick decisions. So, like I said, if you first started out wanting to serve any kids, let's say under 12, but again, as in the example that I talked about a moment ago, let's say you really find out that what brings you the most joy and where you're best able to serve is the infants, babies, and toddlers. You can very quickly sell off equipment and purchase new equipment or change your marketing messaging and things like that because you don't have a physical space that needs to change that you invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in a build out in. So you're able to really adapt based on your changing knowledge and skill set and what is aligned with, like I said, your values, your strengths, and what actually lights you up, what gets you jumping out of bed in the morning, really excited to do. Because something that is really common is that it's not static. It's something that changes and evolves over time. And like I said in the beginning of this video, it's something that you just have to be in it to be able to know. You are not going to be able to get a clear picture of what you enjoy doing the most until you're actually doing it. So a mobile event business is going to allow you to make quicker decisions, be more agile, and pivot if you need to, whether that's based on what you decide you want to do or whether that's based on what the market needs and maybe other competitors are popping up, or maybe you realize that, hey, this really isn't what my market needs, or my market needs tent or tables and chair rentals, or maybe my area needs a food truck instead. By opening a mobile event business prior to locking yourself into a lease, sinking money into a more permanent build out, I love the idea of this because, like I said, it's one of the only ways to get a really clear picture of what you need and what the market needs before ever locking yourself into something more permanent, like a lease, like a brick and mortar location. Another big pro of this strategy is also something that I alluded to, but I really wanted to call even more attention to. And that is the fact that you might be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months into running a mobile event business and decide, this is just not for me. I do not like working with parents or children in this capacity. I was just speaking with a local indoor playground owner who owned a business and has been established in our community for many years. and she serves parents and kids already in more of like a daycare preschool capacity. And she thought that owning an indoor playground would be just one more add on to her current knowledge, to what she was already doing. And she came to me and she said, I am shocked at how different these two business models are, how differently parents act in a daycare setting versus an indoor playground setting, and how many different pieces and moving parts there are compared to the two. And she quickly decided, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to stick to what I know. I'm going to stick to my daycare preschool business, and I want to sell this indoor playground business as quickly as possible. And for some people, the opposite is true. Some people that are really passionate about planning and decorating and things like that, they love operating an indoor playground, but they get really disinterested when it comes to classes or education or daycare or anything like that, because we all have different strengths. We all have different things that light us up. So I think that launching a mobile event business is really smart because it's going to, like I've been talking about throughout this whole video, it's going to allow you an easier out because you're not locking yourself into something more permanent. Sure, you're going to need to sell some of your equipment. Sure, you're going to need to back out on maybe some bookings if you decide to close your business or sell it. But I promise you, it's going to be a lot easier to shut the doors on a mobile event business or sell it than it would be for a brick and mortar location. Another pro of this method is that if something goes awry and you decide that you want to completely pivot or change your business model, or if your first couple parties do not go well and you get terrible reviews, when it comes to launching your brick and mortar business, you can start fresh. You can apply for a new LLC. You can apply for a new DBA. You can rebrand. It's much easier to rebrand when you're switching, not industries, but when you're switching business models than if you were to simply rebrand a play cafe or rebrand a mobile event business. If you switch from one to the other, it's going to be much easier to rebrand. Customers are going to understand that you're making some big changes and big improvements, and what those reviews or what you were offering previously, what was out there before, is something that you are no longer associated with, and this is a brand new venture. So it's much easier to start fresh if something goes awry, if you go from a mobile event to a brick and mortar business, and not just one type of brick and mortar business to another type of brick and mortar business. Another pro, and this one is going to seem obvious, but you really can generate substantial funding for your brick and mortar business. So a lot of people don't realize just how much money there is in mobile event services, because they'll see people advertising on Facebook Marketplace in their area or something like that. And they'll see soft play rental setups for, let's say, $400 or $500. And they're doing the math in their head and they're saying, how many $500 bookings minus, and that's gross revenue. So how many $500 bookings am I going to have to do in order to generate the profit that I need, minus in costs, minus owner's compensation, all of that, to actually get the funding I need for my brick and mortar facility. But what a lot of people don't realize is that this industry has unlimited potential for income. So you can do add-ons, you can start adding balloon decor, you can rent tents, you can rent tables, you can rent chairs, you can do event planning services, you can hire employees, you can have multiple setups so that you're able to generate income from multiple bookings in one day with multiple setups out there with different employees helping to set up each one. So sure, if you're operating as a one man or one woman show and you just have one setup, you're going to generate the funds a lot slower than if you were to, start small and then scale up. And that's another pro that I wanted to talk about is it's a lot easier to start small with a mobile event business and work your way up and reinvest in your business as you go. When you launch a brick and mortar business, it is so true that first impressions mean so much. So if somebody walks in your business, your brick and mortar facility, and things are unfinished and you only have one playhouses when there's clearly room for three, or if you say, oh, we're planning to add this and this and this, or we're going to get a gross motor set up later on, people are not going to come back. Even if you make good on your promises, that first impression, if it's really negative and your space really feels just disjointed and unfinished, people are not going to come back. You're not going to get good reviews and you're not going to get that momentum that your business needs. However, if you launch a mobile event business and you just do one setup, so one, let's say, soft play setup really, really well, and generate a lot of income from those bookings, get some great word of mouth, and then add a second setup. So again, you're not leaving anything unfinished when you launch. You're just starting smaller and scaling up from there. It's much easier to do that in a mobile event setting because again, you're not taking anything away from those first couple bookings. You're still executing that one setup really, really thoughtfully and with really high quality. You're just simply reinvesting that money into your business and then adding more options as time goes on. And you just can't do that with a brick and mortar facility. So if you're still testing the waters, if you're a little bit nervous, if you're a little bit more risk averse, this business model, the mobile event business model, is much easier to start small, reinvest, scale up as you go, scale up as the market needs it. You don't have to do everything all at once, like a lot of times you have to do with a brick and mortar business. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that it's really easy to translate this business model into a brick and mortar business model. So either you can simply move the soft play equipment, if that's what you choose to do, into your brick and mortar facility, or you can keep mobile events as an income stream. So let's say if you have a smaller facility, let's say it's 2,000 square feet, so you do only private parties, you can still have more than one birthday party generating income for your business at a time if you keep the mobile event leg of your business. If not, like I said, it's very easy to move that equipment into your brick and mortar facility as long as you kept it clean and nice and all of that good stuff. So I love that capability that it's very easy to translate. Another thing that I love about this is that you can learn and grow and expand your skill set while you're getting paid. So, a lot of people spend years researching and consulting with other indoor playground owners. But, like I said, until you're in it, until you're hosting birthday parties, until you are in the thick of it, you're just not going to get that same knowledge and you're not going to be able to get that same set of skills. So a lot of people will do that by working for other indoor playground owners, or like I said, traveling and doing hands-on consulting. But until you really, again, are running your own show, it's going to be a slow go and it's going to be a little bit more uphill. And it's, like I said, going to not be quite as quite the same as being in it for yourself. And I love this idea because you can make money and generate funds instead of paying money out of pocket to do this hands-on consulting. Instead of paying money, you can actually generate money and generate income for funding your indoor playground business while you're learning, while you're growing. I love the concept of getting paid to learn and grow through this mobile event business. Now, as I mentioned, a couple cons is number one, this is not a true minimum viable product because you are still in the same industry, but you're serving people in a different way. So, while I do think it is a great way to validate the market need, and it's a great way to figure out if this industry is something you're interested in and all that good stuff, you can hone in on your niche. You can really figure out what aspect you want to dive deeper on for your brick and mortar facility. It isn't a true MVP. So you may have a difficult time retraining your customers like, hey, I'm not just a mobile event business anymore. I also have a brick and mortar facility. So that might be a little bit more difficult because, again, this isn't a direct alignment. You are changing up your services from mobile to brick and mortar. So you might have to do some legwork, like I said, in terms of retraining your customer base on what they can know and expect from you and what services you provide so that they can recommend you and book your services themselves. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that you might change your strategy or your vision. So you might launch this business and, like I said, decide that, hey, I don't really want to work with kids and families. I actually want to be a wedding event planner, or I actually want to open a champagne cart. So what I love about this, even though I listed it as a con, is that, like I said, there's less investment, less time investment, and money investment, and less risk. So you're able to change industries, you're able to change niches, you're able to change your strategy and vision if you want to. But I do like to mention that as a drawback is I tell people like, hey, if you're dipping the toe in the water, be prepared to not want to jump in the rest of the way. So I just like to put that out there, but I'd rather have you figure that out before you sign a lease, before you lock yourself into something more permanent, because like I said, it's much easier to exit or sell a mobile event business. And then the last drawback that I wanted to mention is that it does put more of a wait time potentially between you and your end game. If your end goal is to someday open a brick and mortar facility. But again, I'd rather have you wait, take the longer route, save up so that you don't have to take as much money from a bank. If you are in any of my programs, you know that I always encourage people to use as much from your own savings or from your minimum viable product launch as you can, and to take as little from banks or investors or partners as possible. And I have a ton of videos on that topic, so I'm not going to get too much into it today, but by launching this MVP route, you can generate funds so that you rely less on banks and you will ultimately pay less in interest. But this does take time. I'm not going to lie to you. It is going to put a little bit more of a time and distance between you and your end goal if your end goal is a brick and mortar facility. And your your lifestyle may not be aligned with an indoor playground 5 years from now. So my thing was that, oh, I always knew that once my kids aged out of my play area, I just wouldn't feel the same passion anymore. And that continuing to operate it would be a disservice to myself, to my family, to my employees, and to my customers. So I always knew that I only wanted to operate an indoor facility while my kids were of the right age for the play area that I wanted to open. So this wouldn't have worked for me. I wouldn't have had time to wait 3, 4, 5 years to open my brick and mortar facility because it wasn't aligned with my why or the reason I wanted to launch my business in the first place. But I also recognize that my why might not be your why. And I do recommend, like I said, taking the slow route. It's always to go slow and it's always better to go slow and steady than to rush into something before validating your idea, before deciding if it's something that you actually want to do long term. All right, so that wraps up this video. I hope this gave you a lot more clarity around what a minimum viable product is and how you can use a mobile event business to generate income and funding for a brick and mortar facility. So if you want all the nitty gritty details, this was a very much an overview video, but if you want to learn exactly what licenses, permits, insurance, all that good stuff. If you want to learn everything that goes into launching a mobile event business, if that's something that interests you, whether it's going to be a standalone business or whether it is going to be a minimum viable product for a potential indoor playground in the future, regardless of how or why you want to launch this type of business, I will encourage you to sign up for my mobile event workshop, whether it's the live version on May 24th, 2022, or whether you're just purchasing the replay, it's still going to be invaluable information and it's going to help you launch your business a lot faster with a lot more ease, and it's going to save you a ton of time and money in the process. So thanks so much for watching today's video. I will be right back here with another video soon, so don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys at the mobile event workshop. Have a good day.